Hey, it's Lisa Ryan, and I am the host of the Manufacturers Network podcast. And as we get to the end of Mental Health Month, it's important that that conversation continues. So to keep it going, I'm here today with Laura Timbrook. Now, Laura is not only a well-being strategist who focuses on manufacturing, but she's also the host of the Manufacturing Wellness podcast. So, Laura, it is so good to catch up with you again. I know we just keep doing this all the time, and I just like talking to you.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I agree. I love coming on and chatting, and we have such a fun time.
Well, and when I was thinking today, it's like it's been a while since I've done one of these live streams, and what can we talk about? And in my, actually in the Manufacturers Network podcast today, the episode came out about mental awareness. And it's like, okay, I don't want, okay, May is over. We can stop talking about this, for goodness sake. Because actually in Ray Brown, who's the president of ESCO Group, he talked about what happened with, they had a total safety culture. And, they were actually known, one of his customers said that they were known as safety Nazis, politically incorrect. And then within a couple months of that comment, they had a tragedy at their plant that was totally preventable. So, it's not just May. And I know that because you really focus on that in your business, I just thought, share some of what the things that you are seeing and why it's so important, particularly in manufacturing, to focus on mental health.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things I hear is right now, especially we're coming out of COVID and everything that's happening, is that my workforce is so depressive. Everybody's just we went through 18 months of a total shakeup. Our nervous system, our ability to handle stress is shot. A lot of us have gained additional pounds that we're not happy with. So we're coming into a time where things are starting to open back up, and, we're just not, some of us might not be ready. Some of us might not be sure. There's just this kind of lingering feeling of, I don't know what to think right now. And I think it's important that when we see that happening, and we kind of feel that, our workforce isn't happy like they used to. There might not be joking around in the break rooms like they used to. Maybe people are a little bit more quieter, that we have to kind of, have this conversation on what does depression look like? What does mental health look like? And having that conversation with manufacturers can be a little bit difficult because they're that tough and tumble bunch. Right. They don't like to talk about their feelings. They're not going to be like, yeah, I had a really crappy day today. They're not opening up, where in other environments they might have, or other different workforces they might have. So having that conversation, that maybe going and talking to someone doesn't look like being laid out on somebody's couch in some fancy office that's painted a nice shade of blue.
Right.
There's actually, on the Manufacturing Wellness podcast, I actually interviewed somebody his name is Connor Moriarty from Reset Outdoors. They're a group of psychotherapists that do their therapy outside in nature by walking on trails. So there's so many different types of therapy. It doesn't have to be that typical couch. And letting your employees know that this is available. Sometimes our health insurance companies are offering dollars to use something like Better Health or Talkspace. I think it was American Express. If you had an American Express card, you can get a free membership to Calm. So there's so many options out there that we need to really be kind of taking a look and letting our employees know what's available to them and what maybe therapy looks like for them.
Well, and I think creating a safe place for people to have that conversation.
Mhm.
One of the things I really enjoyed about my conversation with Ray is they had a whole initiative around Get Awkward, and it's okay. It's okay to talk about mental illness or mental wellness.
Mhm.
Because, if somebody breaks an arm or they're hurt physically or they have a disability, you can see that. It's easy to tell in most cases, but if something is going on mentally with that person, it's not. It may not be comfortable to talk about that. To talk about that, and you may not want to bring it up. But it's almost like this before and after. Thinking back, like you said, in manufacturing, not seeing the joking around in the lunchrooms and stuff like we used to. And even though it's 18 months back, maybe it's taking a step backwards and what did the plant used to feel like? And what does it feel like now? And just starting to have maybe those awkward conversations and making it safe for people to talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the biggest things to remember is sometimes it's not our employees. It might be your employees' children, your employees' spouses. Because right now, I mean, we're seeing such an increase in depression and a decline in mental health that, they might be dealing something with their children. They might not know where to go get help for their kids. So I love that whole, let's get awkward. Let's get awkward. Let's have these conversations because so many of us are feeling it. And, it's really interesting because one of the things I was talking to another mental health provider on was how to find mental health resources. If you broke your arm, you would call up your neighbor. Hey, my kid just broke their arm. Where did you go?
Right.
When it comes to mental health, we're not doing that. We're not picking up that phone and saying, where do we go? And a lot of us are maybe afraid to Google it, maybe not even sure what I'm Googling. It's one of the things I love about these new apps coming up because it's right there on a phone. You could speak to somebody, when you sign up for their membership. So, it gives us much more access to it because sometimes we just don't know where to start, even though we know we need help.
Right. And there's got to be, like you mentioned, as far as insurance and maybe employee assistance plans and things like that, that the boss isn't going to find out if you're going to counseling, but maybe the employees don't even know what resources are available. And they don't want to do a Google search because they know then every time they go on Facebook, something about mental health is going to be popping up in their cookies there. And there's still that shame, that embarrassment around admitting that this is tough. I'm going through a tough time right now, because you're thinking that people are just going to be like, suck it up, buttercup.
Mhm.
So, how are you seeing maybe your clients or the people that you've spoken to really communicate the benefits that are available through their programs or different resources they can go to?
One of the things I love is now that we're getting back to opening up a little bit, bringing those health fairs back. And I think those health fairs got to come back sooner than later because they need, having somebody from Anthem or Horizon sitting there and letting them know, here are your resources. One of the things I didn't know for us is during this time, our insurance waived all copays for mental health.
Oh, wow.
There's so many opportunities that people don't realize they're out there. So it's so important that, if you're in HR and there's benefits, you know what? Throw out a newsletter, throw a sign in a break room or a locker room and let them know, hey, these resources are here, because I shouldn't say nobody, but most people aren't going to ask. They're just going to sit there and wait for somebody else to bring up the conversation. Well, be that somebody else and bring up that conversation.
Right. And I know when I had you on the podcast several months ago, the health fairs was one of the things that we did talk about. And at that point, of course, we were on total lockdown and nobody was doing anything when it came to being in the same room with people. So as we're starting to feel that sense of normalcy coming back, I'm actually seeing signs in my neighborhood. Like there's still some stores that will say masks required, and there's other stores that have signs, if you are fully vaccinated, a mask is not required. So it's kind of nice, going into the stores and actually seeing smiles and stuff like that. So for companies that may be out of practice when it comes to doing a health fair, what's some best practices, not only as far as what to include, but again, how to get the employees to get back into the habit of attending health fairs?
Yeah, so the first thing I would recommend is reach out to your insurance broker or your insurance company. Find out. Sometimes there's a lot of wellness dollars that are available. A lot of times, some of them will actually do the health fair for you or have a connection to another agency that runs health fairs. So definitely start with your insurance company. But to bring your employees in, you're going to have to offer them something. So usually food is a really good way to get your employees in.
And not donuts, right?
Not donuts. Actually, funny story. I used to work at a health fair, and the dentist used to bring in like mini Snicker bars. I was like, it drove me nuts every time I saw it. I was like, you're a dentist and you bring mini Snicker bar.
Well, he's trying to up his client base, It's like the more candy he's serving them, the more likely they are to use his services.
Absolutely. But yeah, make it fun. You can, what does really well in manufacturing is competition. So if you have some way to create a competition, you're more likely to pull some of your people off your manufacturing lines when they have a moment and come in. Biometrics, you always want to have at your health fair. Biometrics, they want to get, their blood drawn and understand where their glucose sits, their A1C, all those data points that for the last 18 months we have been ignoring. And then having a nurse or a board certified health coach, preferably both, there. So when they get these numbers, they can go to the nurse and the nurse can explain to them what these numbers mean. And then once they finish with the nurse, then they go over to the health coach, and the health coach kind of helps them create a plan of attack. Like, how are we going to address this A1C? Or how are we going to address our cholesterol? That way they have an opportunity to understand, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what it means. Here's how I fix it. You want to make sure you have all those three encompassed, because you don't want somebody walking out of your health fair thinking, well, I'm going to die. It's not what we want. We want to give them hope.
Now, when you say biometrics, like what is it and how does it work if people are not familiar with that term?
Yeah, so biometrics is your height, your weight, your blood pressure, things like that, just kind of giving us an understanding of what things look like. A lot of times they run the glucose testing to see where your sugar is sitting. I can't tell you how many times I've actually seen people that had no idea they had high blood sugar, and it was really high to the point where we're letting them know you have to get yourself to a doctor and have this further looked at, but they had no idea. So it's really important. Or high blood pressure. Blood pressure is so often overlooked. Everyone's like, yeah, I got high blood pressure when I go to the doctor. Well, so many of us, when we go to the doctor, we get all worked up, not for nothing. No one wants to step on that scale. And then after you step on the scale, they sit you down. They're like, now I'm going to take your blood pressure. And you're like, I'm already totally freaked out. But the good thing is it gives us an understanding. Now, probably if you go to the doctor, it's going to be a little high, but it opens the opportunity of education and talking about it, understanding what blood pressure means, how it affects their overall life. And they can go for, so many times blood pressure is stress. And when we talk about mental health, stress plays such a big role in it. So being able to monitor our blood pressure, understand our stress level, it's kind of like that symbiotic effect, that one thing affects something else. So it's giving us a big look at everything that's going on. And of course, if you're running a health fair, bringing in a mental health provider. So someone has the opportunity to maybe see what, talking to someone can look like I was telling you about Reset Outdoors. Not all of them are a couch in someone's office.
Right. Well, and one thing that you brought up about blood pressure, I think that it's super important, particularly with people who are taking blood pressure all day long. They know what's normal. You know,
Mhm.
I went and I gave blood last week and he told me, it took my blood pressure, told me what it was. I'm like, I think that's good, right? You know, because really I have no idea. So maybe sitting down and saying you're in the, you know, normal for
Mhm.
your age and everything is right in this area, you're here. And just really taking the extra step of that conversation, because not everybody knows exactly, well, is that good or is that high? I have no idea. And if you're putting, you know, you have the biometric people, you have the blood pressure and all the other stuff, the nutritionists, the dietitians, everybody that we expect to have at this health fair, and then just including that mental health professional,
Mhm.
that counselor, that coach, that whatever, you know, wellness coach, whatever you're calling that person, that gives them the opportunity to address. And also things like the Calm app. That's one of my favorite things is I have Calm, and then I
Mhm.
also go on YouTube. You
Yeah.
know, if I'm looking for a specific kind of meditation, not medication, keeps you away from medication when you do meditation. But, um, just to be able to, you know, again, know those resources. And with Calm, I mean, for goodness sake, it's 10 minutes.
Mhm.
You're giving 10 minutes to your mental health for the day.
Yeah, and one of the good things is there's, if someone's not a big phone person, there's things like fishing. Fishing is great to kind of lower that blood pressure, relax, have a moment to yourself. Self-care, so many times we think of self-care as like going to get a massage or maybe get a facial done or something very pampering. But self-care is so much more than that. It's really checking in with ourselves to see how we feel, how we're reacting. And it could be something like going fishing, going for a hike, maybe jumping on your motorcycle and going for a ride. These are all ways of self-care. So self-care is a whole nother part of mental health. You know,
Right.
we have okay, when we need help, we go to the doctor or therapist, but we want to make sure that we're maintaining our mental health on a daily basis or a regular basis.
Right. Well, and especially now that the weather's starting to turn.
Mhm.
And well, actually, 2 weeks ago in Cleveland, it was Mother's Day and we had snow. And yesterday it was in the, you know, high 80s. So summer arrived. But last week when it started to turn, I put on my tennis shoes and took a walk around the neighborhood. Now, for me, all winter long, I have the mother of all treadmills down the basement. But what I do is I bring my computer down there and turn it into a walking desk. So physically, I'm getting some activity, but mentally, I'm still in work mode. So when I am walking around my neighborhood, there's just something there. You have the sunshine, you have the fresh air, you're away from work. There's just these little things that you can do. And again, having walking meetings at the office or at the plant, getting outdoors, just having the opportunities to do little tiny bits of self-care throughout the day.
Yeah, and you made a really good point with walking outside. One of the things that we use a lot of times is when we have clients that are anxious, we tell them, focus on your senses. What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you feeling? And when you're outside and you're walking and you're unplugged, you're naturally smelling the air and you're feeling the breeze on your face and you're focusing on maybe on your footsteps as you're walking. So you're already naturally doing something that you don't even realize is helpful. So it's so important that we focus on that and take just 10, 15 minutes to ourselves to focus.
Yeah. And that fresh air, I will tell you, and I know around here anyway, it's lilacs are in season. So I'm not even going to admit the number of properties that I trespassed on so I could go directly up to their lilacs and smell them, because that is one of my very favorite. There's something just so calming and beautiful about that. But really, I like that of focusing on the senses. How does the air feel on you? How does the air, how does the air smell? All of that, the sunshine, and what are you hearing, and the birds. And I haven't heard the cicadas yet. They're supposed to be around, but they're not here yet. So I don't know what's going on with that.
We don't have them in Pennsylvania yet either. I'm like, I see my friends in Maryland keep posting. I'm like, we're right by Maryland. What is happening?
I know. Where are they? Because that is honestly, and I know some people, they don't like the cicadas, but the sound of the cicada is my very, very favorite sound of nature. I actually bought several years ago a DVD of just cicada music. Cicada sounds. It wasn't even music. To me, it is.
Yeah, well, that's like the best sound to go to sleep to in the summer is those cicadas.
Right, exactly. And then my husband will be like, "What cicadas? Really? Dude, you need to get your hearing checked." So also, that's the other thing. Pay attention to your spouse or to your significant others when they say you need to get your hearing checked.
We just went through that with eyes. My husband was like, I can't see the receipt. I was like, you need your eyes checked.
Right, exactly. So what are some of your best tips when people go back and watch the recording of this or are tuning in, when it comes to just, again, keeping that conversation going about mental health?
Yeah, the first one is, let's focus on our self-care. Really focus on how we're feeling, because you can't help somebody else. If your family's struggling, you can't help them if you're not helping yourself. So focus on yourself. Give yourselves a few minutes every day just to check in and say, how am I feeling? If you are feeling down or you're finding yourself retracting a little bit more, reach out. It can be putting a call into your insurance company if you don't want to run a Google search. Talking to friends, having those conversations. And I loved what you said about get awkward. So if you're the employer, you know what, maybe have that awkward conversation and just open up the conversations, because I think it's so important that we break this stigma of mental health, and we have to start having these conversations, because so many right now are suffering and they're not knowing where to go, or maybe they're too afraid to reach out.
Right. Well, and I know that you deal with this through your business, not only in May, but all year. So if somebody does want to connect with you as far as consulting, to do a health fair or whatever it is, what are some of the services that you provide, and how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I do a lot of speaking events. If you're running a health fair, I can come in as a board certified health and wellness coach and be seated there talking to your employees, coaching them. I do a lot of seminars and workshops. So the best way that you can get in touch with me is going to lauratimbrook.com. And if you want to hear more about me, you can find me on any podcasting platform on the Manufacturing Wellness Podcast.
Well, Laura, it has been a pleasure to have a conversation with you again, and I so appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. This was great.
All right. Well, I am Lisa Ryan, the host of the Manufacturers Network podcast, and we'll see you next time.